You don't expect your parents to betray you in broad daylight, but I'll never forget the day I walked into my bedroom and saw everything I'd spent years building gone. My name's Daniel, I'm 22, and for as long as I can remember, I've lived and breathed technology. While most kids begged for toys, I begged for spare computer parts. Every extra dollar from birthdays, every tip from my part-time jobs, I saved them all. Not for a car, not for vacations, but for one dream: to build my ultimate custom PC. By last year, I'd finally done it. A machine worth $3,600, my masterpiece. It wasn't just for gaming. It was my lifeline. I used it for freelance design gigs that paid my bills, helped me save for college, and kept me afloat when my family couldn't or wouldn't help. But here's the thing about my family. My parents believed they knew what's best. And what they thought was best usually revolved around my little sister, Vanessa. She's 18, the golden child. Designer shoes, luxury handbags, the latest phone the moment it drops. She's always been showered with praise and indulgence, while I got the same line over and over: "You're older, Daniel. You can handle disappointment better." I handled it. I kept my head down, worked hard, and stayed out of the chaos. I thought if I focused on my own goals, I'd be safe. I thought wrong. That Saturday started like any other. I'd just gotten back from hanging out with my best friend, Ethan, brainstorming strategies for an upcoming gaming tournament. We were hyped, convinced we had a real shot at winning. I swung open my bedroom door, ready to practice, and froze. My desk was empty. The tower, the monitor, the keyboard, gone. Even the headset I'd saved up for months to buy vanished. My heart pounded as I scanned the room, convincing myself I was seeing things. Had someone broken in? No. Nothing else was touched. The posters on my wall, my books, my dresser, everything else was in place. And that's when it hit me. The quiet downstairs. My parents' voices drifting up from the kitchen, calm, casual, like nothing had happened. I stormed down the stairs. "Where's my computer?" I demanded, my voice sharper than I intended. My mom looked up from her coffee, completely unfazed. "Oh," she said, as if it were no big deal. "We sold it." For a moment, I couldn't even speak. My mind blanked. Sold it? My $3,600 PC? You? What? Dad sighed like I was the one overreacting. "Your sister needed new clothes for her senior gala. We didn't have the money, so we sold the computer. It was just sitting there." Just sitting there. I felt something inside me snap. Years of sacrifice. Late nights working, every penny saved, dismissed with 4 casual words, just sitting there. That was the moment I knew everything was about to change. I stood there in the kitchen, gripping the back of a chair to keep my hands from shaking. My mom sipped her coffee like nothing was wrong. My dad scrolled through his phone. Vanessa was sprawled on the couch, snapping selfies in her new designer dress, the one they'd bought with the money from my computer. "Do you even hear yourselves?" I finally managed to say. "You sold something I worked years for, and for what? A shopping spree?" Dad didn't even look up. "Watch your tone, Daniel. It's just a computer." "Just a computer?" I laughed bitterly. "That computer paid my bills. It's how I do freelance work. Do you have any idea what you've done?" Vanessa rolled her eyes. "Oh my God, Daniel, you're so dramatic. It's not like you can't build another one." That smug grin on her face, it was like gasoline on a fire. "Build another one? Do you know how long it took me to save for that? Years of part-time jobs, skipping nights out, eating ramen because I couldn't afford anything else? But yeah, sure, I'll just build another one." Mom finally set her mug down. "Your sister had an important event coming up. We didn't have the funds and we had to make a decision for the family." "No," I shot back. "You made a decision for Vanessa." Like always. The words hung heavy in the air. No one spoke. For a moment, I almost thought I'd gone too far. But then Vanessa snorted. "Well, maybe if you weren't glued to that thing all day, they wouldn't have sold it." Something in me snapped. "Do you have any idea what that PC meant to me? It wasn't just a game console. It was my career, my future. But you wouldn't get that, would you? Because everything you want, you get. No work, no sacrifice, just handouts." Her smile faltered, but she stayed quiet. I turned back to my parents. "You didn't even ask me. Not a text, not a call. You just sold it like it was nothing." Dad finally put his phone down, his voice sharp. "Everything in this house belongs to us. You live under our roof. You follow our rules. If you want control over your stuff, get your own place." For the first time in my life, I realized he was right. Just not in the way he meant. Fine, I said quietly. Maybe I will. I walked out before they could reply, straight to my room, or what was left of it, and slammed the door. My heart pounded in my ears, anger and betrayal twisting in my chest. I grabbed my phone and texted Ethan. Me? They sold it. For Vanessa's clothes. Ethan, are you serious? Dude, that's insane. Me, I can't stay here. Not after this. His reply came fast. Ethan, then don't. Come crash at my place until you figure things out. For the first time all day, I could breathe. But before I left, I needed answers. That night, I knocked on Vanessa's door. She was sitting on her bed, surrounded by shopping bags, humming to herself. You knew they'd do this, didn't you? I asked. She looked up, feigning innocence. Knew what? Don't play dumb. You told them about my computer. You planted the idea. Vanessa smirked. So what if I mentioned it? They're the ones who made the decision. Not my fault they agreed with me. Her words stung more than I expected. Not because she said them, but because she meant them. I stared at her, really stared, and realized something. I'd spent years trying to earn respect in this house. I thought if I worked hard enough, stayed quiet enough, they'd see me. But they never did. And in that moment, I decided I was done begging. The next morning, I started making plans to leave. I barely slept that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Vanessa's smug grin and heard my dad's words on repeat. Everything in this house belongs to us. Maybe that was true. Maybe that's why it never felt like my house to begin with. By sunrise, I'd already made my decision. I was getting out. I didn't have a perfect plan. My bank account wasn't exactly overflowing, but I had enough freelance gigs lined up to scrape by for a couple months. And Ethan had already offered to help me crash at his place until I figured things out. Still, walking away from everything I'd known? It felt impossible, but staying felt worse. The first thing I did was gather every bit of proof I had about the PC. Receipts for the parts I'd bought, screenshots of my freelance earnings, even photos of me building it piece by piece. I didn't know exactly how I'd use it yet, but part of me wanted them to see it, to understand just how wrong they were. By mid-morning, I walked downstairs to find my parents in the kitchen. Mom was stirring oatmeal. Dad sat at the table reading the paper. Vanessa, of course, was nowhere to be found, probably still asleep after a night of posting her new outfits online. Morning, Mom said flatly, like nothing was wrong. I didn't bother with small talk. We need to talk about my computer. Dad lowered the paper just enough to glare at me. We already talked. No, I said firmly. You talked. I listened. Now you're gonna listen to me. He opened his mouth to interrupt, but I slapped the folder of receipts on the table. I paid for every single part of that build with my own money. Not yours, not Vanessa's, mine. You had no right to sell it, and you sure as hell had no right to keep the money. Mom crossed her arms. We used it for family needs. Vanessa's needs, I cut in. Don't pretend this was about the family. Her lips tightened, but she didn't deny it. Dad leaned back in his chair, his voice low and cold. You live under my roof. That means your stuff is our stuff. If you don't like it, you can leave. It was supposed to be a threat. Instead, it felt like permission. Fine, I said. I will. The silence that followed was heavy, like the air had been sucked out of the room. Mom blinked. You're not serious. I am. Dad scoffed. And where exactly do you think you're going to go? You can't afford rent. You barely make any money freelancing. You'll be crawling back here in a week. Maybe, I said. But I'd rather sleep on a friend's couch than stay in a house where I'm treated like I don't matter. Before they could answer, Vanessa waltzed in, phone in hand, hair still messy from sleep, but wearing a brand new sweater, probably another piece from her spree. She looked at me, confused. What's with the yelling this time? I turned to her. Congratulations, Vanessa. You got what you wanted. Hope the clothes were worth it because I'm done. She smirked. You're leaving? Over a computer? That's pathetic. Something in me snapped. No, Vanessa, I'm leaving because of you, because of Mom and Dad, because no matter what I do, I'll never be more than an afterthought in this house. You can keep being the golden child. I'm out. For the first time, her smirk faltered. Mom stepped forward, panic flashing in her eyes. Daniel, you're overreacting. I grabbed my bag and slung it over my shoulder. No, I'm finally reacting. And with that, I walked out. Heart pounding, adrenaline rushing, unsure if I was making the biggest mistake of my life or the best decision I'd ever made. The moment I closed the front door behind me, the silence was deafening. No yelling, no guilt trips, no Vanessa stomping around upstairs. Just me, my duffel bag, and a sudden wave of freedom mixed with terror. Ethan pulled up 20 minutes later in his beat-up sedan. He didn't ask questions, just popped the trunk and said, "You sure about this?" "No," I admitted, "but I can't stay there." He nodded. "Good enough for me." We drove in silence for a while. My phone buzzed non-stop in my pocket. Texts from Mom, missed calls from Dad, even a string of half-hearted lol good luck messages from Vanessa. I didn't answer any of them. For once, I wanted to think about me. Ethan's apartment wasn't much, a tiny one-bedroom above a laundromat, but it felt like sanctuary. He'd cleared a corner of the living room for me, even found an old folding table so I could set up my PC once I got it back. "Not glamorous," he said, "but hey, no one's gonna sell your stuff here." I laughed. For the first time in days, it felt real. The next 48 hours were chaos. Between freelance deadlines and figuring out where I was going to live long term, I barely had time to breathe. But somehow, the grind felt good. It was mine. Every dollar I made was mine. Every hour I worked wasn't being dismissed as just gaming or not a real job. By the end of the week, I'd tracked down the guy who bought my PC. He was sympathetic when I explained what happened, shocked even, but firm about the deal. "I paid your parents fair and square. If you want it back, I'll sell it to you for the same price." $1,200. It was everything I had left in my savings, but I didn't hesitate. That PC wasn't just hardware. It was years of blood, sweat, and late nights. It was my freedom. 2 days later, Ethan drove me to pick it up. The guy met us in his driveway, the tower still in perfect condition. "Hell of a build," he said, almost reluctant to hand it over. "You sure your parents sold this without asking?" I clenched my jaw. "Yeah, they did." Lifting it into the back seat, I felt something I hadn't felt since this whole mess started. Relief. Like a piece of myself had finally come back. But the calm didn't last. The night I got my PC back, my parents showed up at Ethan's door. I should have known they wouldn't let me leave quietly. Mom looked furious, Dad stone-faced. Vanessa sat in the back seat of their car, scrolling on her phone like this was just another episode of family drama she could half watch. "Daniel," Mom started, voice shaking, "get your things. You're coming home." I stayed in the doorway, Ethan behind me like backup. "No, I'm not." Dad's voice was low, dangerous. "You think you can just walk out after everything we've done for you? Everything you've done for me?" I laughed bitterly. "You mean selling the one thing I worked for to fund Vanessa's shopping spree?" "Yeah, thanks for that." "Don't twist this," Mom snapped. "We're a family. Families make sacrifices." "Funny," I said. "I'm the only one who ever had to make them." For a second, no one spoke. Then Dad stepped forward, his tone icy. "If you walk away now, don't expect us to be there when you come crawling back." I met his stare without flinching. "I won't be crawling back." Behind me, Ethan whispered, "Doors staying closed, right?" "Right," I said. Mom's eyes filled with angry tears. "You'll regret this, Daniel." "Maybe," I said softly, "but I'll regret staying even more." I shut the door. Their voices faded down the hallway, muffled then gone. For the first time in my life, I felt like I was standing on my own 2 feet. Terrified? Yes, but free. Weeks passed after that night, and the silence from my parents was deafening in a way I didn't expect. No late-night yelling, no guilt-laden texts, nothing. It was as if they'd erased me from their world, and for the first time in my life, I realized I was okay with that. Without the constant weight of their expectations and favoritism, I could finally breathe. I threw myself into work like a man possessed. Every waking hour was spent either freelancing or streaming. The first few streams were quiet, barely a handful of viewers. But then one night, someone clipped a highlight of me clutching a game in overtime. It went viral. Overnight, my follower count spiked. Suddenly, people were showing up in chat not just to watch me play, but to hear my story. I didn't hide it. I told them about saving for years, about the betrayal, about starting over. And to my surprise, instead of pity, I got support. Messages like, "You're an inspiration, man," or "Glad you cut out the toxicity." It felt like someone had finally seen me, the real me, not just the afterthought I'd always been at home. Money started coming in steadily from both streaming and freelance gigs. Enough to cover rent on a tiny studio of my own, nothing fancy, but every inch of it was mine. Setting up my PC in that little corner felt symbolic, like I was planting a flag on new territory. No one could take it from me again. Ethan helped me paint the walls. A dull beige turned soft gray, and we laughed until our arms ached. It was the first time in years I felt like I was building something instead of just enduring life. Then the fallout came. Word got around. Small towns have long memories and even longer gossip chains. A mutual friend mentioned my parents were struggling financially. Turns out, maxing out credit cards for Vanessa's designer lifestyle wasn't sustainable, especially now that I wasn't pitching in with groceries or bills. The car they'd bought for her graduation gift was repossessed. The shopping sprees stopped, and for the first time, Vanessa wasn't glowing on social media. Her posts shifted from smug selfies to cryptic quotes about fake people. I won't lie, part of me felt vindicated, not because I wanted them to suffer, but because for years, I'd been the one carrying the weight while they pretended I didn't matter. Now they were living in the mess they'd created, and I wasn't there to clean it up. Months later, I got a message from Mom. Not a rant, not an accusation, just 3 words. Can we talk? For a long time, I stared at it, wondering if I even owed her a reply. I didn't. I still don't know if I ever will. Some bridges once burned don't need rebuilding, because the truth is, I'm happier now than I've ever been. Free from walking on eggshells. Free from constantly proving my worth to people who never valued me. Free to choose myself for once. And as I sit here tonight, finishing a freelance project with my stream running in the background, I realize something. I'm no longer defined by what they took from me. I'm defined by what I built in spite of them. If you've ever been in a place where family treated you like you didn't matter, let this be your sign. You're allowed to walk away. You're allowed to choose peace over chaos. And trust me, life on the other side of that door is better than you think. If this story resonated with you, make sure to follow. I share stories like this every week, and you won't want to miss what comes next.